Thor had always known how it would end, from the moment he first held Mjolnir, from the first thunder that roared beneath his feet. He felt the inevitable weight of prophecy. It was a cycle no god could escape, not even him, the strongest of the Aesir. Time folded in on itself, carving the end into runes that did not lie. He saw himself standing before the world serpent. Jörmungandr would rise, its massive head towering above the ocean, its colossal body strangling Midgard, and the sky would tear apart with thunder. They would fight as they were destined to. Venom would burn through his veins, and yet he would still crush the beast's skull before taking 9 steps and collapsing, dead. The end would come. Fire would consume all. Time would begin anew. But Ragnarok never came, and that was a mistake. Asgard still stood, its golden towers, its endless halls. Everything seemed unshaken, but only on the surface. Beneath, Thor could feel it, the taste of something wrong, like sour mead sliding down his throat, like meat that looks fresh but reeks of death. The halls, once alive with the roar of feasts and the clash of battle, now felt like empty caverns. The gods spoke less. They walked slower. Thor saw wrinkles where there had once been eternal youth. Dry, withering skin where divine vigor once thrived. Odin no longer spoke. The All-Father, the one who had traded an eye for wisdom, the one who knew the whispers of the very universe, was silent. Seated upon his throne, his figure seemed smaller, as if he were shrinking, as if something was draining him, drop by drop, stripping away the essence of who he was. And Loki, Loki, his half-brother, his enemy, his ally, the bringer of chaos, the one who always found a way to be present, always lurking in the shadows, always laughing, always whispering. He was gone. No one knew where. Or worse, no one spoke of it. It was as if Loki's absence was not a mystery, but a forgetting. Then the sound came. At first, Thor thought it was the wind, or the distant growl of thunder. But then he realized it was lower, deeper, more alive. Something was weeping. It was not a human lament, nor a god's. It was greater, far greater. Each night, as darkness swallowed Asgard, the sound stretched across the sky like a whisper from the very fabric of reality. Long, mournful, it was a cry of loss. But whose? Who was mourning? Thor stood at Asgard's gates, his fingers tightening around the handle of his hammer, staring into the infinite, searching, trying to see beyond the veil. But there was nothing but the stars. Or perhaps something was there. Something too vast to be seen. Something the universe itself was trying to hide. And then, beneath the pale dawn of the next day, Thor saw it, the first corpse of a god. The smell was the first thing that hit Thor. It was not the scent of blood spilled in battle, nor the stench of flesh burned by Mjolnir's lightning. It was something thicker, heavier, a stench of something ancient, something that should not be there, but was. For Seti, the god of justice, lay upon Asgard's cold marble. His body, stiff and contorted, looked as if it had withered from the inside out. His skin, once golden like sunlight, was now pale, wrinkled, stained with something dark. His eyes, Thor froze as he looked into them. The empty sockets were not just black. They were deep, as if they were holes in reality itself, as if the void had devoured the god's sight, and his mouth gaped open in an eternal scream. There were no signs of a struggle, no swords, no marks of battle, no shattered runes around the body. For Seti, son of Baldur, the one who judged the conflicts of the gods, had simply stopped, as if something had drained him from existence. The blood was not golden. It was not even blood. It was black, thick, pulsing. Thor knelt beside the body and touched the viscous liquid with his fingertips. It was a mistake. The sensation was immediate. Something crawled beneath his skin, like thousands of tiny, living needles winding through his veins. Something whispered, low, faint, almost imperceptible. But he heard it. Thor. He yanked his hand back, gasping, and watched the dark droplets on his fingers dissolve, as if they had awareness, as if they were trying to escape the light. The god of thunder's heart pounded in his chest. Not from fear, but from something worse. Recognition. This was not death. This was not murder. This was decay. And ThorVsJ was not the first. Thor knew it before he even turned around, before he saw the pale faces of the other gods watching, frozen, before he noticed how their expressions were not of shock nor grief. They were of acceptance, as if they had known this would happen, as if they were simply waiting for their turn. And then, far above, beyond Asgard, the weeping in the sky grew louder, clearer, closer. Asgard was not supposed to feel like a tomb, but that was exactly what Thor saw. The golden halls, once filled with laughter, drinking, and endless battles, now echoed only with the sound of the wind. The steps of the gods no longer carried their former strength. They walked like shadows of themselves, eyes downcast, shoulders slumped. There was a strange silence in Asgard, not the silence of peace, but the kind that waits for something to collapse. Valhalla, the hall of fallen warriors, once ablaze with eternal fires and alive with songs of victory, now felt like a mausoleum. The Einarjar, those who had died in battle and were brought here to fight in the end times, no longer trained. They only waited. Thor felt the weight of it all like thunder on the verge of striking, yet it never came. A storm held in the air, suffocating, inescapable. ThorVsJ's body had been taken. No ritual, no funeral pyre. It had simply vanished. And no one spoke of it. No one spoke of anything. Thor clenched his fists as he walked through Odin's great hall. His eyes traced the throne where his father once sat, where the All-Father once murmured a fate, of the currents of time, of the paths no one else could see. But Odin was there, silent. His vacant eyes stared into the infinite, as if he saw something no one else could, as if he heard something no one else could. Thor stepped closer. A chill ran down his spine as he realized Odin did not even blink. He whispered, "Father, what is happening?" No response. The silence was so absolute that Thor almost didn't notice it at first. But then he felt it. It was not exactly a sound. It was the absence of one. The thunder no longer answered his call. Mjolnir felt heavier than ever, as if something was pulling its power away, as if the hammer itself was drifting from him. And then that night, Thor heard it, the sound from the sky. But this time, it was not just a distant lament. This time, it was something more. This time, someone was calling his name. Thor did not sleep that night. The sound kept him awake. It was a cry, yes, but not like before. Not a drawn-out lament, lost in the veil between worlds. This time, it carried a different weight. Something clearer. Something was calling him. Thor rose abruptly, muscles tense, heart heavy. He walked to Asgard's balcony, where he could see beyond the 9 realms, where the stars still shone but seemed farther away. The wind howled, cold and sharp, and then came the sound, faint at first, almost an echo at the edge of reality. But then it grew, a wail carrying something beyond sorrow, something that made him shudder, that made Mjolnir tremble in his hand, as if the hammer, too, recognized it. The voice, it was a blend of muffled thunder and a breath of despair. And within the distant ripples of that celestial morning, Thor heard it. Thor, not a desperate plea, not a cry for help, but a warning. A shiver ran through his skin, a primal instinct roared within him, something he had not felt since the great battles against the giants, a certainty that rooted itself in his chest like a blade of ice. Something was above. He lifted his eyes, and for the first time in his existence, Thor felt fear. There, high in the sky, beyond what any being could see, there was something too vast to exist, something that trembled, something that moved slowly, something that wept. And then Thor knew it was waking up. The smell returned before the sight, thick, rotten, saturating the air like an invisible poison. Thor knew before he even saw. He knew finding another body was inevitable, but that did not make the scene any less horrific. There it was. ThorVsJ had not been the first. The body lay at the foot of the great Bifrost Bridge, the rainbow that connected the worlds. But there was no color here, only something broken, something that no longer seemed divine. It was Vidar, the Silent One, the Avenger of Odin, the strongest of the Aesir after Thor. But there, sprawled in an impossible position, he looked fragile, like a puppet of flesh and bone carelessly discarded on Asgard's cold ground. And then Thor saw it, the same mouth, open in an eternal scream, the same sunken eyes, their sockets like voids. But Vidar had something different. His hands were buried in his own chest, as if, in his final moments, he had tried to tear something out of himself, something that should not have been there. Thor knelt slowly. The hammer felt heavy again, as if the weight of the universe pressed upon his shoulders. He ran his fingers over the corpse's skin, cold, hard, like rotting stone. Then he looked up. The sky was bending. The stars shimmered like reflections on water. Something was warping reality itself, as if Asgard was ceasing to be a place and becoming a tomb. Thor clenched his fists. This was not a natural death. This was not murder. This was something the gods did not understand. Then, in the distance, a sound echoed, not the weeping, something closer, something coming from Heimdall's tower. Thor rose abruptly, his eyes blazing, the thunder aching to roar, but still silent. The guardian of the bridge was always there. Always. But this time, Thor knew, the tower would be empty. Thor ascended the steps of Heimdall's tower in haste. Each step was a muffled thunderclap against the cold marble floor. He already knew what he would find, but still, he felt a shadow creeping into his mind, a premonition heavier than Mjolnir itself. The Guardian's tower had never been empty. Until now, the great hall was a well of silence. Heimdall's sword, which never left his side, was embedded in the floor as if it had been dropped. But he was not there. Thor advanced slowly, his eyes scanning the space. Odin's ravens did not circle. No sound echoed, not even the wind. Then he looked at the great mirror of the tower. Heimdall saw everything. Every world, every path, every lie hidden between the threads of fate. His tower was the highest point in Asgard, a beacon shining over the 9 realms. But now, the mirror was black. Not dark, not empty. Black, a void that swallowed light itself. Something living, something pulsing, like an open wound in the fabric of the cosmos. And then Thor felt it. The entire tower was trembling, not from the outside, but from within, as if space itself was collapsing, as if something was writhing, struggling, trying to break through the fragile shell reality. The mirror groaned, and then Thor saw it. A face, not Heimdall's, not a god's, something beyond. Hollow eyes, void of color, a motionless mouth, open in a lament he could not hear but could feel, a presence unrecognized by time itself. And then the mirror cracked. The fracture spread like a spider's web, and the sound from the sky changed. It was no longer just weeping. Now it was something awakening. The crack in the mirror was growing. Thor felt the air grow heavier, as if he were trapped in the center of a storm that would never form. The thunder was silent, the hammer cold in his hand. And on the other side of the crack, the hollow eyes kept staring at him. Then the mirror shattered. Shards scattered across the floor of Heimdall's tower, but none reflected Thor. None reflected Asgard. They were shadows, fragments of a void slowly spilling into the world. And then he heard it, not the weeping, not the whisper that haunted his dreams, but a sound he knew, a deep low growl, sharp as a blade of wind, a sound that made bones vibrate, that made runes pulse in the very fabric of reality, a sound that had not echoed since the dawn of time, the breath of the world serpent, Jörmungandr. The prophecy foretold that the serpent would roar at the end of all things, that its coils would crush Midgard, that its venom would destroy Thor before he could take his final 9 steps. But Ragnarok had not come. So why was the serpent moving? The tower's floor trembled, and Thor felt something crawl beneath his skin, an ancient sensation, primal, the instinct of war, the instinct of death. But something was wrong. The serpent should not be alive. Not without the start of the final war. Thor stepped out of the tower, his gaze locked onto the horizon. Something writhed beyond the clouds, within the shadows of the stars. A slow movement, a colossal slither, as if the sky itself was twisting, shifting shape. And then, in the deep silence of Asgard, he heard it, Thor, but it was not a call. It was a warning. And this time, the voice did not come from the sky. It came from the ground. The ground trembled, not like thunder, not like an earthquake. It was a deep, subtle tremor, constant, like a heartbeat buried beneath the stone. Thor felt the vibration crawl up his legs, echoing inside his bones. Something beneath his feet was pulsing alive. And then he knew where to go. The well of Mimir, the source of ancient wisdom, where Odin had sacrificed an eye to see beyond the veil of reality. If something was wrong with the gods, if time was unraveling, if the serpent was stirring, the runes would tell the truth. Thor marched toward it. The journey should have been long, but time no longer followed its own rules. His steps felt distorted. Shadows stretched and shrank without reason, as if he were walking through a world that no longer wished to be solid. And then he arrived. The well was withered. The water, once crystal clear and bubbling with knowledge, was now dark as a starless sky, a dense, unmoving liquid that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The runes surrounding the well, those that told the story of Asgard and all fates ever written, were scratched out. Someone or something had tried to erase them. Thor knelt, running his fingers over the carvings. Some marks were still visible, but they were fragmented, like sentences cut off before they could be finished. He muttered the ancient words, trying to decipher what remained. The serpent moves. He frowned. He already knew that. He read on, but time does not. Thor narrowed his eyes, and then came the final fragment. Death was stolen. A thunderclap exploded inside Thor's mind. This was not just a delay in prophecy. This was not a flaw in destiny. Ragnarok should have happened, but something stopped it. Something stole death from the gods. And if death never came, then they were only rotting, their bodies withered, their souls drained away, slowly, like sand slipping through trembling fingers. The gods were not alive, but they were not dead either. Thor rose abruptly, Mjolnir trembling in his grip. If death was stolen, who had stolen it? Behind him, the surface of the well rippled. A reflection emerged. It was not his own. It was a face. Familiar. Someone who should never have been there. Loki. The reflection in the well trembled. Loki stared back, but not with his usual smile, that mocking gaze of someone always a step ahead. No, this Loki looked empty. His eyes were dark as a starless sky, his skin pale, his mouth slightly open, as if trying to speak, but without a voice. Thor clenched his fists. "Where are you?" His voice rumbled like thunder trapped in his chest. The reflection did not answer, but something around the well shifted. The earth trembled again, but this time it was not a slow pulse. It was a violent jolt, a spasm from the ground itself. The air grew heavier, as if the world were holding its breath. Then Loki moved his lips. No sound, but Thor understood. It woke up, and then everything collapsed. The ground split open, cracks spreading like corrupted roots. The well shattered, its black waters bubbling as if they were alive. The thunder, which had been silent until now, erupted in fury. Mjolnir responded. Thor raised a hammer, and lightning tore through the air, illuminating the shadows writhing within the fractures of the world. And he saw it, something crawling beyond the stone, something that did not belong, something ancient, something that was not God, not man, not beast. It was before all of those. And then the voice that had called his name from the sky mixed with Loki's laughter. Not laughter of mockery, but laughter broken. The laughter of someone who finally understood the horror that was coming. The hammer fell. The explosion of thunder shattered time. And Thor's name echoed into the void. The thunder tore through the world. But the thunder was not enough. The impact of Mjolnir should disperse the shadows, burning everything with the fury of the heavens. But what Thor felt was not the usual shockwave. It was emptiness, as if he had struck something that could not be touched. The energy faded without an echo. The thunder died before it could spread. And then the wind came. First a whisper, then a wail. The air around Thor twisted, cold, wrong, laden with something that did not belong to this world. The ground of Asgard trembled beneath his feet, and the sky was bending. His name was spoken again, but not by Loki, not by the weeping in the sky, by the wind itself, a dragged-out lament, each syllable crumbling into the air, spoken by invisible mouths, countless dead. Thor, the voice was both familiar and foreign. It was the voice of Asgard, of the gods, of those who were dying without dying. He turned, Mjolnir gripped tightly, searching for something, anything that could explain what was happening. That's when he saw it. The ancient runes on Asgard's walls began to glow, words that had never been written, words that belonged to no divine language. They burned, writhing, twisting like serpents made of light. And then the wind stopped. The silence was crushing, and within it, Thor heard, not a voice, not a name, but distant laughter, a laughter he knew too well, a laughter he never wanted to hear again, the laughter of Jörmungandr, the laughter of the world serpent echoed through the void, low, resonant, something that should not be possible. The prophecy said it would only speak at the end, and the end had never come. Yet here was a sound, slithering like an echo between realities, an ancient resonance that made the very air tremble. Thor felt the thunder tingling beneath his skin, the hairs on his neck standing on end. Something was wrong. Something was beyond his understanding. And then he saw it. Another body. This time at the heart of Asgard. Baldur, the immortal, the god who was not supposed to die. He lay broken upon the golden stones, his skin pale as that of a drowned corpse. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open, but there was no sound. No eternal scream, no frozen expression of horror like the others. Baldur looked empty, not dead, absent, as if the thing that made him a god had been pulled out. Thor felt his stomach tighten. This death was different. This death was not normal. He knelt beside his fallen brother, touched his skin, cold as the marble of a long-forgotten tomb. The thunder growled inside him. Rage swelled, crushing doubt, crushing uncertainty. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew it had to end. And then, in the suffocating silence of Asgard, the weeping returned, closer, louder, and for the first time, it no longer sounded like weeping. It sounded like something crawling into the world. Thor stood. The wind was still, the thunder silent. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Baldur's body lay motionless, but Thor knew he would not be the last. Asgard was dying, but not in fire and glory as it should, not in battle, not as the prophecy had foretold. It was fading. Reality around him felt fragile, cracked, like thin ice beneath heavy steps. The stars above flickered, bending in ways that made no sense. Even the light itself felt wrong, and the weeping in the sky, it was no longer weeping. It was breathing, something immense waking, something the gods feared without knowing its name, something older than time itself. And for the first time, Thor felt that the hammer in his hand might not be enough. He looked to the horizon, and then the sky shattered.